I'd like to introduce our facilitator and main spokesman, Dr. Miguel Powers. Okay. Let me give you a little bit of background. Dr. Powers is a Fullerton College English professor where he has received not one, but 2 Teacher of the Year awards. He is one of the leading scholars on growth mindset. He earned his doctorate in education from UCLA. Dr. Powers co-facilitates a statewide community of practice implementing research and growth mindset strategies to improve student success. He has presented growth mindset in China, our district student equity conference last year. He recently presented growth mindset to our faculty during January Flunks Day. Dr. Powers has a passion in assisting students to succeed. Without further ado, I will please give a warm welcome to Dr. Miguel Powers.
I'm excited to be here, and I thank you for that great introduction. I think the idea of having a passion for helping students succeed is probably one of the best compliments I could get, so I'm going to take that as a win for the day. I want to say I'm really proud and excited that you guys could get here in the morning. We have a lot of great things for you to do in the morning and a great presentation on grit and then the student panel, so we're going to have a lot of information, but it's also a lot of active learning. So how many of you tried to do the warm-up challenge? Okay, well there'll be some more time. We're not going to give away the answer yet, but one of the things I want to take away from this activity is the idea is the struggle is where learning takes place. And if you approach challenge as learning opportunities, you will find that you get a lot more out of it. And remember that it's only failure when you stop. Otherwise, it's learning, because that's how human brains learn, is they get to experience they haven't done yet, and they develop new strategies, behaviors, and approaches. So I'm really excited to be here and share that with you. A couple little technical things before we get started. If you don't already have a packet of handouts from this morning, if you could raise your hand or something so we make sure there's a couple people who need them. At Fullerton College, we've been talking about habits of mind and growth mindset for about 4 or 5 years. It's been our main focus. And we've been really excited about how it's helped transform students and faculty and our campus as a whole. We want to have people approach our college and what I hope you'll think about your education as a growth campus, a growth experience. So habits of mind and metacognition, which is a big word you'll hear me say a lot, is how to think about your thinking. Because the way you think is a way of thinking, and when you realize that you have choices, you can change the way you think. And that's what metacognition means. It means thinking about your thinking to improve your thinking. So when you think about how you're thinking now and realize you can make different choices and think differently, it's very empowering. It allows you to have more control over your experiences. So we're going to talk about, once you believe and understand neuroplasticity and growth mindset, how much control you have over your response to situations. So that's what we're going to talk about. Sometimes I like to tell people a little bit about my story. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Illuma wallet. Anyone ever heard of the Illuma wallet before? A couple people? I have one that I'll pass around in case you're not familiar with it, so you can just look at it and see. I came to growth mindset because of the Illuma wallet, which is a strange reason to come upon a theory of education. But my son Jack has a pretty severe learning challenge that I identified when he was really young. When he was in kindergarten and first grade and in preschool, they identified he couldn't really read. He had visual processing. We got great support from the school, and we took him to several psychologists. And the psychologist would say, your son is interesting, which is not what you want them to say, because that means they don't know how to help you. If they knew an easy fix, then it's not interesting to them. So you don't want your child to be interesting to psychologists, because it really means they're not sure how to help you. But that's what we found. And they knew he was highly intelligent, but he really had trouble reading. He may, at that point they said, he might biologically never be able to read. His brain might not process information with his visual eyesight to get to it. He's highly intelligent. That was never the question. It was just about reading. And so we couldn't figure out if he maybe would be able to work through it and develop and his brain matured or not. But as long as he said, I can't read, he wouldn't try. And if he didn't try, we'd never find out. It's always a little emotional for me, sorry. Whew, okay, bring it back, okay. So we talked about growth mindset. We found that, started using that language with our son, and what does that have to do with the Illuma wallet? Well, one morning at 5:30 in the morning, my son wakes up really early. He comes in, and he's standing right in front of my face, and he goes, Dad, 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 Dad. And I jump up, and I think like the house is on fire, but it's not. And he's sitting there telling me about why we need to buy the Illuma wallet. And he tells me all these amazing features of the Illuma wallet. Like you can drive over it with a Jeep. It holds 20 credit cards. No one can steal your information electronically. Remember, highly intelligent visual processing problems. But he memorized the commercial. And I'm like, Jack, it's 5:30 in the morning. And then, and this is the big moment in our family, he handed me a piece of paper. Whew, every time. And he had never written anything down like until adults had tortured him, right? It was really hard for him. So the fact that he stopped the TV, written down the number to order Illuma wallets was the first time he'd ever done anything like that. Whew, okay, so that's the hardest part of my day right there, getting through that story. So we bought like 45 Illuma wallets in the next couple of minutes. Everyone we know got one for Christmas, and my son Jack is now doing really well. He's actually, oh, thank you. Whew, he's actually in high school now, but he doesn't let me hug him for cute pictures like that, so I use this old one. So he still struggles in school, and it's really hard for him, but he says things like, I have dyslexia, and it's hard for me, but if I do this and this and this, I can be successful. He doesn't actually have dyslexia. It's much more severe than that, but that's his language that he talks about it. But it's the fact that he has a thought process, that he has control, and he can make different choices. That's what it means. So that's my story of how I got into this. And then I went to graduate school. I've been teaching for about 15 years. I went back to school to get a doctorate in education, and I went with the idea of how do I get growth mindset out to other people. So that's how I got there. In the last several years, we've developed a series of interventions that we can train teachers to do in their classroom. We have 4 that we usually do. The best one is the first one, and we're going to do that one today. And every time when we do these activities, we have a concept, an activity, and reflection. And the reflection is really important. That's where we stop and think about, what did I learn? What did I get? What am I going to do differently because of this? And I want to encourage you to do that reflection in your learning. Even when teachers or others or experienced don't ask you for it, do it because that's what good learners do. You stop and you reflect. You ask yourself, why is this important? How is this helping me? How am I going to use it? Because that's where the learning is really going to change who you are and not be an activity you do for someone else. So I strongly encourage that reflection, and that's part of that metacognition. Anyone remember the definition I gave you of metacognition? It's a tricky phrase. Thinking about your thinking to improve your thinking, right? That's a form of reflection. So you're purposeful and intentional about changing how you think because you think about how you think, right? Okay, so we're going to do this first one. Now, a couple of you are going to be active in this session. You're going to help me. So if you have a pink Post-it note on your green sheet, looks like this, a small pink Post-it note. Go ahead and hold it up. There should be 7 of you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still looking for a couple more little pink Post-it notes. 5. Okay. So we're looking for all those. Good. You're going to be on the pink team in just a minute. If you have an orange one, hold your orange one up. Good. We should end up with 7 of those. Great. You're going to be on the orange team in just a minute. If you don't have a Post-it note, that's okay. I'll explain what you're going to do too. So everyone has a green sheet though, and that's where we're going to start. Okay. If you read the very top of the green sheet, it talks about learning discussion number 1, brain function. I want to start talking about this idea of neuroplasticity. So it tells you we often go to school to learn, but we don't often talk about how we learn. You're there to learn something, but we don't step back and think, how do we learn? And if we think about how we learn, we can learn better. And it's important to recognize you probably learn differently than your friends and family. There's not one way of learning. And when you're aware of that, you can start choosing patterns that work best for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we learn. We understand how your brain works. You can work your brain better, right? So first question, if you have a pen, just take a minute or so. Describe how your brain works. What do you think right now, before we talk about it at all? Just describe how your brain works.
Repetitivity,
Repetition. Okay, great. And so actually, can you just write it down?
Okay.
That was an open question. That was a good answer. That was a great answer. Yeah.
Visual.
A visual? Okay.
Visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Visual. It's like a game, like matching.
Good.
Then I'll remember it.
Okay. I'm sure if you had more time, you could write more, but that's okay. We're just getting you started so we can actually go further with what we think is one place, then we're going to go past that with new information, hopefully. So I'm going to play a short video clip for you that's going to give you some information about how our brains work in a little bit more of detail. So let's go ahead and listen. What happens inside your brain when you are thinking? So that was to help us introduce the concept of neuroplasticity. This is a representation of the brain cells. So the large items, those are neurons. That's what we call a cell inside your brain. You see there are branches coming off of those. Those are axons and dendrites, and that's how the brain makes connections. When you learn something new, you create a neural pathway. How many of you studied a foreign language in school? Several of you? Okay. And if you stop studying that language, what happens? You forget it, right? But what if you go back to it again later? You don't start at zero, right? You start to remember the things. How many of you just remembered things that you forgot you remembered? Right? That's happened to everybody, right? So that's what happens is you've built a neural pathway. Sometimes we lose the path, but it didn't go away. And that's why we can remember something that we learned before without having to learn it again. You built a neural pathway. Another way to think about this, if you go somewhere where there's a pretty park, right? Maybe school at the beginning of a year, and there's that grass, and it's all perfect. And somebody walks across, they cut the corner, right? If one person cuts the corner, it doesn't make any difference. But what happens if 100 people or 1,000 people cut that corner? What happens? It makes a path, right? You can see where they're all cutting the corner. That's what happens similarly in your brain. If you do something one time, that's not going to make a long-term connection. But when you do something over and over, just like people cutting across the grass, it makes a neural pathway. If you had to study something that you had to memorize, like your times tables or things in nursing, or if you're working in a field like automotive technology and do something over and over, you get to the point where you can do it automatically without trying. Now, some of you are older like me, and you may remember a time when you had to remember people's phone numbers. Right? I know most of you, some of you don't know what I'm talking about, but there was a time when you had to remember someone's phone number, and when it got to the point where you could think, it would not even try and just come back to you, that's called automaticity. And that's what happens when you build the strongest kind of neural pathway over and over, and you get to the point where you can remember it without trying. That's called automaticity. And so that's what happens with neuroplasticity. So this one is kind of neural decay. It's not a part of your brain you're using a lot. You used to use it, but you're just kind of taking a break now. But neuroplasticity is the exciting part. This is what happens when you learn new things, when you challenge yourself, when you put yourself in new situations, you create new pathways. And so one way this happens is by doing something over and over repetitively, right? So you create neurons. And the way that scientists talk about this to help people like me understand is they say the neurons that fire together, wire together. The neurons that fire together, wire together. And then you build that pathway and you have it for the rest of your life. So all that hard work is worth it. Sometimes you forget, but it's still there, right? So that's called neuroplasticity. So to help us kind of understand a little bit better, this is where I need my team. So if I could have those of you who have a purple Post-it come up here, please, and stand right here. If you have a purple Post-it. Pink. Thank you. See? You guys are paying better attention than me. Good job. Pink. So if you have one of these, come on down. You don't need to bring it. Just come on down. Are you going to stand next to each other right here? Yeah. So if you have one of those, come on down. Let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I need one more. Will you pretend you have one for me? Thank you. Okay. So you're going to stand shoulder to shoulder right here. Okay. All right. Now, we're trying to master the concept of neuroplasticity. So their bodies represent the neurons. That's the large cells in your brain. Does that make sense? Okay, go like this. Now go like this. I just like to see people do that when I ask them to. No, actually, you're really helping them because you're giving them a mnemonic tool. Like watching you do this is going to help them remember that your arms represent the axons and dendrites, the branches that come off. So your arms represent that space. Now, between each cell, each neuron, and the branches, there's a gap. It's called a synapse is the name for the gap. And the way your brain gets information across there is it uses neurotransmitters, which are a combination between chemicals and electrical pulses that jump across. So each of you need to take a spoon and pass it down because you're going to model for us a simplified version of how we make new neural pathways. So each of them represents a neuron. Their arms represent the axons and dendrites. The spoon represents the neurotransmitters. And the first person gets to use your hand and pick up a cotton ball. So go ahead. Put it on your spoon. And then you pass it. Everyone else just uses the spoon to pass it down here. And when you're done, you can step forward a little bit. You're going to put your cotton ball in that spoon. Okay. So what just happened there? They're building a new neural pathway. A moment ago, they weren't standing next to each other. Keep going, please. Keep going. So they're building a new neural pathway, and they're passing information. So if you were walking down the street, and you see something out of the corner of your eye, and you have to decide, is it a rock, and I should duck, or it's a bird, it's going to go right over my head. No problem, right? Well, right now, your eye is here. Your occipital lobe, where your brain processes information, is all the way in the back of your brain. So that information has to go all the way back here. Good news, you have a really strong pathway, and it's fast, super fast. So if you drop one, you can't pick it up. That means you dropped your train of thought. Okay, keep going. So they keep building this pathway and making it stronger and stronger. And they're going to keep practicing. So now, if you have an orange Post-it note, in a minute we're going to have a competition. So not yet, but in a minute, if you have an orange Post-it, you're going to come up over here. You're going to stand shoulder to shoulder just like they did. You're going to pass out your neurotransmitters. And then you're going to pass the cotton balls again. So orange team, do you understand what we're going to do? All right, if you don't have a Post-it note, that means you're on the audience team, and you have a very important role to play. You get to pick the pink or the orange team to cheer for. And then I'm going to ask you questions about who you think is going to win and why. So orange team, when it's your turn, when I say go, you're going to come forward, stand shoulder to shoulder, pass out your spoons, and then start passing the cotton balls. This team is going to already be here, but we're going to reset so they don't start with any cotton balls. Okay, so you're racing them. You get to go. As soon as I say go, you get to start. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Orange team, when I say go, you get to stand up. Now I want to say this clearly. This is not the kind of game that's worth getting hurt for. So if you are in the orange team coming forward, make sure you arrive safely at your destination and do not trip or fall or harm anyone else. So, orange team, are we ready? Pink team, are we ready? Audience team, have you picked someone to cheer for? I want loud cheering. Okay, ready, go. Orange team, come on down. You guys go ahead and get started. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We go.
Come on, orange team.
That's right, yeah. So they're passing out their spoons. Right now, more cheering from the audience. They need help, they need support, right? I like it. We got chip going. This is good. We got excitement. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's okay. It worked out. It's okay. Go ahead and get started. You guys are great. Okay, so.
Come on, orange team.
I like the support and cheering. Who are you guys rooting for over there? That's good. I like the support. A lot of orange. And nobody wants to root for pink. You guys don't like the winners? Head team, head start. All right, so your audience is against you. You guys can do this, though. I believe in you. All right. While you're out there, I want you to be thinking, who do you think is going to win and why? And stop. No more. That one doesn't go. Okay. All right. So while they're counting, so if the people at the end could count your cotton balls for us, I want to hear from the audience. Raise your hand. Who do you think is going to win? Okay, so the pink team because they already have the experience. Excellent answer. Did you have an answer as well?
Same thing. They've been working on it longer and practicing.
So they have more practice. Excellent. Someone else? Anyone else? Yeah. So that was excellent. I want everyone to hear that. She talked about changing their strategy. And strategy is one of the most important parts of having a growth mindset. You don't want to just work harder, you want to work smarter. So they saw a better way. They changed how close they were, moved closer, shortening the distance, making it easier. Changing your strategy. That was a great observation. Thank you. Yes?
I was going to answer that. They coordinated themselves, realizing that they were far from the cup, noticing that they had a challenge team next to them. So they got more coordinated to get closer and got more into like, okay, this is what we already have to do.
Fantastic. So, and they did it, what I heard part of what you added was they did it together, right? And collaboration, opportunity to learn with your peers is really good strategy. Okay, did anybody want to vote for them and guess that they're going to win? All right, well, let's see how it came out. How many did you have? 10. And how many did you have? We didn't count yet. 31. All right, well, let's give a round of applause. So, they had a lot of challenges, but let's give them a round of applause for coming up and doing a good job. That's 10 is good. Your reward for winning is you get to stay here for an extra second. Good job. Thank you, guys. Now, one thing that you guys maybe couldn't see because of how far away or whatever, but you didn't, what was that? I heard it. The spoons were different. This is an interesting example of where a mistake is a great learning opportunity. Because as was mentioned, I got to go to China and present about this. Well, I didn't bring my own cups and spoons to fly around the world. That seems silly. So when I got there, I said, can I have some cups and spoons and cotton balls? And they said, no problem. But they brought me these spoons, which if you can see, are like soup spoons. They're super deep. And at first I was like, oh, this is going to be bad because it's harder to drop the cotton ball, right? This spoon is better for the job than this one, right? But then I realized, no, it's not bad. It's exactly what learning looks like. Because after you learn how to do something, you can do it better. And our job isn't to learn content. It's not to learn one thing. It's better to learn how to learn. So every time you approach a problem, you have a better spoon. If we learn how to learn, you will learn everything better. It's not enough to learn stuff. It's way more important to learn how to learn, right? And that's why this is so brilliant. So if you go to an environment and you find out how can I learn better strategies, right? That's what you talked about. Not just the content that I'm trying to get right for this moment, but how do I learn better for every moment? That's when you become more successful. And that's what metacognition does, because you think about your thinking. If you figure out one solution and one way to solve a problem or handle a situation, it's probably not the only or the best way. And often in life, we keep doing the first way over and over instead of stepping back and saying, what are the other ways? What are the better ways? What are the better spoons? This is what I've been using for 2 years. Then I found this one, and it's better, and I make sure that it's not fair. Why do you think we let this group start first over this group? Why do we set the game up that way? It's totally not fair. It's hard for them to win.
Because life isn't fair.
Yeah, like if you've been in a classroom or other environment, maybe a coworker who's been there for a while and you're new, and they already know how to do it. Does that mean that they're smarter than you? No. It means they already have built their pathway, they've had practice, but when they were born, whatever it is that they're doing right now, they couldn't do. If it's speaking a foreign language, if it's learning how to solve a problem or how to run a machine, they didn't know how to do it either. It's not about who's smarter, it's about who's using better strategies to get better. And from where you are now doesn't mean that you're going to be behind them the whole time. Right? They started out not having this. So every time you learn something new, you have to build a new neural pathway. So let's do a little knowledge check now. So help me out here. What do their bodies represent? That word starts with the N. Neurons. Those are the cells inside your brain. Remember, this is going to help them. Go like this. Come on, it's going to help them. Do it for them. Let's go like this. What do these represent? Axons and dendrites. What do the spoons represent? This is a tricky one. Neurotransmitters, right? And then synapses is what we jump across. That's the space. So that's perfect. So that's what happens. They built a new neural pathway. They use neurotransmitters to pass information. And that's how we move information, how we learn things, how you memorize and master concepts and skills. So you guys just learned about neuroplasticity. And every time you learn something new, your brain changes. So let's give them a round of applause for helping us out. Thank you very much. You guys can leave the spoons on the table. Have a seat. Thank you for joining us. So this is a short video from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to try and show what this looks like. It's going to start, I think. There we go. So this is a visual representation of neuroplasticity, of happening in your brain. When you learn something new, axons and dendrites grow together. They build that neural pathway. Now, you've heard me say neuroplasticity over and over and over, and you've heard me say metacognition over and over and over. So right now, if those are new words for you, this is happening in your brain right now. That repetition, there's actually a pathway framing in your brain. And there's studies they can use with science to measure change over time. This would be too small to measure. But there was a study where they taught people how to juggle, and they measured their brain before and then after they learned how to juggle. And after they learned how to juggle, the section of their brain that had to do with visual processing and coordination was bigger. And then they stopped juggling for 3 months, and they measured their brain again. And it was smaller than it had been at the peak, but not back to the same part. Because remember, once you build it, you keep it. So when you work hard to learn things, your brain changes. In another example, they had mice in 2 groups. One group of mice was kept in a cage by itself, food and water, but nothing to play with and no social action. The other groups were kept in a social environment with several mice and toys. When they had finished their life, they weighed the brains of the 2 groups. The social interactive group of mice, their brains weighed 10% more because their brains had grown. So your next handout looks like this one, light blue. This is just some information that can help you master this concept about neuroplasticity. So the first column, we don't have to read it right now. The first column describes the brain structures like we talked about. The middle column reminds you of that handy phrase, the neurons that fire together, wire together, right? And the last column explains how our cotton ball game models that. But I wanted to call attention to the picture at the bottom. Do you see those 2 images? So you can see the circle on the left. The branches that go up like a tree, those are the dendrites, and the single long one that comes down is the axon. But look at what happens in the next picture. This is what happened to those mice and why it weighed 10% more. Because when you grow, you get more density. There's more dendrites per cell. And that's how your brain can weigh 10% more. Good news, some people ask me, wait, if I learn stuff, my head will explode? Good news, there's lots of room in there. You can grow a lot without pushing on the skull. It's going to be okay, right? So it's going to be fine. That's what neural density looks like. Okay, so now you have a next handout. Looks like this. And this is a really useful graphic. If you want to find this one, the easiest thing to do is type in growth mindset and search images. This is the first one that pops up. So for over 30 years, Carol Dweck and many other researchers have been able to identify that the mindset that people have makes a dramatic effect on their outcomes, how successful they are. And here's a pattern of ways that that happens. If you have a fixed mindset, that means you don't believe that you can change your outcome. So let me say this, for example. If I wanted to get taller, would it make sense to go to the gym every day and lift weights to get taller? That makes no sense, right? Lifting weights doesn't help you get taller. I can't change my height by lifting weights, right? If you say, I'm not a math person, or I don't learn well, or I struggle with English. I teach English to my students. I'm not a writer. So you'll say that. Well, if you have a fixed mindset, you're thinking that your intelligence is like your height, and you can't really change it. But what we know from science, from neuroplasticity, is your intelligence is actually more like a muscle. If I want to get bigger biceps, it does make sense to go to the gym and lift weights or something else, right? Because that behavior will change the outcome. And that's what we need to understand. When you have a growth mindset, you understand that based in science, your brain is like a muscle. It's not a muscle, it's like a muscle. It responds to challenge. We build new neural pathways, right? So what happens if you have a fixed mindset, you want to avoid a challenge because you don't want to look bad, right? But if you have a growth mindset, you want to get into challenging situations because that's where you're going to learn. As we started with this morning, the struggle is where the learning takes place. If someone asks you a question you already know, you don't learn anything when you answer it. If they ask a question you don't know yet, that should be exciting because that means you're about to learn something you didn't know before, right? So that's what we want to think about, is engaging the struggle, finding the challenge, because challenge is where learning. If you want to build your muscle and you lift a tiny little weight that doesn't challenge you, is that going to help you grow your muscles? You have to list something that's hard for you, whatever that means. And it might be different from person to person, but you have to get to the challenge. Wherever the challenge is for you, that's where change happens. Here's another thing to think about. If it doesn't challenge you, it can't change you. If it doesn't challenge you, it can't change you, right? You have to find that space where you're challenged. There's the comfort zone, and then just past it, there's the learning zone. And you have to be able to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's what learning is like. Not panic, not danger, not severe risk, just uncomfortable, because that's what learning happens, right? So you want to be able to persist in the face of obstacles. You see effort, if you have a growth mindset, as something that's part of learning and good. Some people who think, oh, I have to work hard, that means I'm not smart. That's not true. If you have to work hard, it means you're at that place where you're changing, right? We can all stay in the place where it's easy and there's not a lot of effort, but that's not where change is going to happen. You respond to criticism differently. If you have a growth mindset and a teacher writes on your paper or gives you feedback that you're not doing this yet, but you should try this, if you have a fixed mindset, you see it as harsh and mean and not helpful. If you have a growth mindset, you're like, thank goodness this person cares enough to give me feedback on how to get better. You see it as learning feedback, right? And when you have a growth mindset, you have success of other people is exciting because you're not in competition with them. You're about getting better from where you are today. And seeing other people is great because you know what it does? It tells you, who should I go get help from? If you're in a class and someone else is doing well in that class, you shouldn't be like jealous or upset that that person's doing well. You'd be like, great, how are you doing that so I can learn how to learn better? How do you study for this? How do you learn this stuff? How do you practice it? Because they probably have better strategies. You know what they have? They have better spoons, right? How do you get better spoons from the people who already know how to do it? Right? That's what we're talking about. When I see successful people, I want to get better from them. That's what I'm looking for. What are the things that they're already doing that got them there? Right? because I have a lot of ability and I can change how I proceed. Right? So this is a useful graphic, and I've been partnering with this lab at Stanford, and when I recently met with her, she told me to be sure to tell everyone I talk about that each one of these bullet points here has been tested in random controlled tests and proven over and over and over. So this isn't just a hypothetical, maybe this happens. Each bullet point on here has been repeatedly demonstrated in numerous tests in rigorous scientific studies. So this isn't just a hypothetical, okay? So this is a picture of my sister's brain. My sister was born with cerebral palsy, and they told my parents when she was born that she would never be able to walk or talk. Really severe. And she went through rigorous physical therapy and all kinds of work, and now most people who meet her don't know that she has any problem. Like if you talk to her a while, you'll notice this arm is significantly underdeveloped and doesn't function very well. And this leg is about 1.5 inches shorter. But she just kind of stands like this when she's talking to you, and you wouldn't notice for a while. And you would not notice like verbally. A few years ago, she started having seizures, and in part of the treatment, they actually did this scan. So this is from about 2 years ago. This is her adult brain. They said that if this happened to you as an adult, in all likelihood, you'd probably be in a coma if you got this kind of injury. But her brain found new pathways to do things. So instead of using the same part of the brain that you and I would use to communicate or to read or to taste different flavors, her brain used neuroplasticity to do different things. She's a completely functioning adult that most people who meet her don't notice she has cerebral palsy, right? So when we say we can't do stuff, it's like, okay, wait, like, come on, you're not doing it yet, but that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? If our brains can overcome that, then we can learn lots of things. That's what I mean by taking on challenge, because she worked really hard. My parents worked really hard. They got her expert, lots of physical therapy. So I just like that image because I know how powerful she is and what we can do when we try to overcome challenge, right? So a lot of times in school, we measure outcomes like, what was your grade? And we know things go into that, like the behaviors, did you study, and your social skills. But what we're talking about today is something that comes before all those things. One of the biggest ways you can change yourself and those around you is to change their mindset. Because the mindset determines how you act. How you think about something before how you act. So when we change academic mindsets and you change your own academic mindset, you will change the outcomes you get. Whether that's getting the job or being successful at that job or being successful in the classroom, your mindset comes first. And so we're going to talk about 3. We've already talked about growth mindset, which is believing that you can change your intelligence. Knowing that your brain can change and learn, and if my sister's brain can overcome what it has to, we can all overcome lots of things if we do the right strategies. The second one is belonging. If you feel like you belong to a learning community, it's safe. If we're saying take risks and be willing to be wrong, you have to have that safe space. So we have to have a sense of belonging. So how do you create that for yourself? How do you find people in your classes or in your workspace that help you feel safe? How do you create that space where you're a valued member of the community? And that's about choices you make. When you sit in that scenario for the first time, like today, if you didn't know someone, did you reach out and make a community connection? Right? How do you create belonging? Right? And lastly, purpose. This is essential for grit, which we're going to talk about a lot today. If you think something is important and you're doing it because you value it, you'll work hard at it. How many of you have ever been in a classroom environment where someone in the class raised their hand and said, is this going to be on the test? A couple of you? Yeah, not you, of course not. But someone. And that makes sense. Actually, that's a good question because we've been in school a long time and we know that what you're asking me to remember is important if you're going to put on the test. If it's not important enough to be on the test, I can forget it right now. Because I'm not learning this for me, I'm only learning this for you. And that means memorizing it till the day after the test. That's pretty smart, actually, right? Because they don't have a purpose, right? But if you're doing something because you want to do it, you never ask, is this going to be on the test? Because you want to know this. This can help change who you are and how you act. I'm a runner. My friend is a runner, and she has my favorite t-shirt. And her t-shirt says, my sport is your sport's punishment. Because if you play soccer or basketball or pretty much anything else you get in trouble, what do they do? Go run a lap. The runner's like, thank goodness, I've been waiting all day to run laps. That's what I came here for. If you have passion for what you're doing, you will work hard for it, and it doesn't even feel like work. So our challenge is when we're learning to find the purpose. Why am I learning this? What is my goal? What is the thing I'm working hard for? Because sometimes the thing right in front of us isn't easily connected. It's not obvious. But if it's part of your goal, you will work for it, and it won't feel like work. Believing you can change, having a safe space to take risks and put yourself in that challenging learning environment, because struggle is where the learning takes place, which means some of the time you're wrong, but being wrong is good because it means you're about to get right. And then having a purpose. That's mean. If you can change your mindset, you can improve your outcomes. So we're going to talk about the power of yet. So you're going to get a paper to talk about the power of yet. Please keep it face down. Don't turn it over until I say, okay? So the power of yet. So keep the numbers face down when you get the paper. Once you've learned that you can change, we want to get better spoons. We don't want to try harder, we want to work smarter, right? And that means using intelligent practice, which is effort plus good strategies plus help from others. Smart means getting help, learning from other people, finding out from people who have better spoons, right? Often we go to school to learn, and when we go, we take tests to find out who has certain skills or abilities and who doesn't. We're about to take a test like that that's going to identify who has this skill. This skill is very important. It's not just going to help you be successful in school, but in today's technological environment, it could help determine if you're going to be successful or not everywhere. So it's really, really important that you have this skill. Some of you probably will have it, but some of you won't. But we're going to find out who has it. Since it's so important, I want to make sure the instructions are clear. So if you don't understand the instructions, make sure you ask before we start. Okay? So let me tell you the instructions. It's very simple. When I say go, but not yet. When I say go, you flip it over. Not yet. And then you start circling the numbers on the other side of the page in ascending order. So 1, then 2, then 3, and so on. But you can't skip. So let's say you already saw where 6 was, but you haven't found 5 yet. Keep looking for 5. You can't skip. So all you have to do is when I say go, not yet, flip it over, circle the numbers going up. Does everyone understand the instructions? Okay, you have 30 seconds. Remember, this is a really important skill, so I want you to do well. Ready, go. "15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Stop. All right. Who got 30? Oh. Huh? That's good. 28 you said? 9. Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. 24. That's good. Okay. So I mentioned that this is a really important skill. And I want you to do better. So let me give you a piece of advice and another try. Okay? So first the instructions. Wherever you left off. So if you left off at 12, you're going to start at 13 and then keep going. So wherever you left off, and I give you the new 30 seconds, you're going to keep going. Does that make sense? Okay, ready for my really helpful advice? It's going to really help you a lot. Are you ready? Try harder. Ready, go. "20 seconds. 15 seconds. 5 seconds. Stop. Now, I'm going to have a small math problem for you to help see how we did. You're going to take your first number and subtract it from your second number to find out if you did better or worse the second time. So if you got 12, and you had 24 in the end, you'd subtract 12 from 24 to find out you got 12, right? So subtract your first number from your final number. Okay? Subtract your first number from your final number. So what did you get in round 1? Yeah. Okay. So if you had 9 and then you got to 20, you'd subtract and find out you got 11 in the second round. You did better. Okay. So now we're going to find out if you're a good learner and I'm a good teacher, hypothetically. How many people did better the second time? See, I feel like a great teacher. Look how many people did better. My helpful advice. How many people did worse? See, now I feel bad about myself. How many people did exactly the same? Points for consistency. That's good. Okay. Before we go any further, how did this experience make you feel? Stressed. Rushed. Pressured. What could I possibly have done that caused you to feel stressed or pressured or rushed? The time, yelling out the times. Right? Here you are looking for numbers, and I'm like, 10. Like, I'm not looking for 10. Shut up. Yeah, right? And how about when I told you this was going to be like the most important test ever that would determine your life outcomes, right? That's a lot of pressure. Do we ever do that in school? We tell you, this is a really, really important test. Does that help you do better? No, it doesn't. Okay. How about my wonderful, helpful advice? Was that good advice? What does that even mean? Some people did get better, but if you think about it, you should do better, right? Maybe, because there's fewer choices, right? As you circle, there's less to look at, right? So hypothetically, at some point, you should get faster because there's fewer that haven't been circled yet. So somewhere that happens. Depends on where it is, but somewhere. So, okay, now we're going to pass out another round, because remember, the whole point of this activity is to teach you intelligent practice, which is effort plus good strategies plus help from others. Because if you're already trying hard, so if we can pass out the blues, they've got blues. All right, so you got a blue on your table. Thank you. They're so efficient, I'm behind. Okay, so if you're already trying hard and you have a study strategy and then you don't do well at what you're doing, should you keep doing what you're doing? No. Trying harder is not as good as trying smarter. So everyone needs a blue one. So to learn how to work smarter, you're going to take your second one. For most of you, that's blue. And you're going to fold it in half. We're working on intelligent practice. It doesn't matter if you fold it hamburger or hot dog, which I'd never heard of until someone asked me. Because you're going to fold it again so it looks like this. And then it doesn't matter if the numbers are inside or outside because you want it to look like this. So you fold it until it's in quarters. Yeah, it's the same. Thank you. So you want it to look like this. Make sure you got really good creases when you get it folded like this. You want the crease. That's the most important part. Everyone got theirs folded? If you see someone needs a little help, go ahead and help them. Make sure everyone gets it. So when everyone has it folded like this, and if you need help from a partner, that's great. That's what we're talking about right now, getting help from other people. Go ahead and unfold it, because I'm going to give you some actual helpful advice, not try harder. What some people may have started to notice, but if you didn't notice yet, that's the point. There's a pattern. It's not random. And the pattern is, number 1 is in the first quadrant. Number 2 is in the second quadrant. Number 3 is in the third quadrant. Number 4 is in the fourth quadrant. And then the pattern repeats back to this pattern, and then here, and then here, and then here. Does everyone understand the pattern? Does anyone have any questions? Yes. That is a good point. Let me come back to that. That's a really good point. Okay, so how come I didn't tell you that in the first place? Which is on purpose, and it's a good question. Okay, so now I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to try and see if you can do better. So, ready, begin. So you have 30 seconds to see if you can improve on your new try with the pattern. And stop. How many people did better? All right. So I want to come back to why we don't start with that. But the first thing I want to remind you of is the power of yet. The first time you tried it, you probably didn't have a strategy. You were just probably blindly looking around, right? Maybe some of you sort of found one that was a couple away and you put your finger on it and held it for later, right? I know I'm going to come back to this one in a second. That's a good strategy, right? That's what you talked about. They develop a better strategy. That's good. I was in a room when someone showed me this. I was sitting in your seat, and someone did this with about 60 teachers from Fullerton College. And I was out there, and when they count, who did 30 the first round, right? And I was like, I didn't get 30. And I looked around, someone else had like 26. I was like, oh, they beat me. I don't like to lose. And so he asked her, this faculty member, are you a math teacher? Which is a funny thing, because it really doesn't have anything to do with math. And no, she was an English teacher. And he's like, well, that's interesting. So how did you do it? He asked her. I didn't ask you because I didn't want someone to give it away. But he asked her, and she said, I noticed it went like this. So she found the pattern all by herself, which was great. Then he gave us the second try. And this was one of those moments that really changed me watching this happen. I was sitting right next to her, so I'm like, oh, she was really good at it, and she was an expert, and she had the circular pattern. So when we did the second try, where you had 30 more seconds after the try harder comment, I did better. But when he asked how many people did better, only 4 people in the whole room did better. And when he asked why, they said, because I was so mad that you told me to try harder that I couldn't learn. So when an expert who had gotten 26 in their first try said the pattern, a room full of teachers with advanced degrees didn't hear it, didn't learn it, and didn't do better. That was like a transformative moment for me. Because as a teacher, it reminded me, you can't just say something to someone one time because people aren't ready to hear it. Their emotions, their other things get in the way. You have to have people have chances to learn. Learning doesn't happen once. And even if it does happen once, the mental pathway doesn't happen once. You have to learn and learn and learn. Learning is what's called recursive. It takes time and go back to it. And you maybe have something and you kind of forget and go back. Like when you first learn to ride your bike or a skateboard or any other balance thing. It's really hard. And then you kind of get it. And then you step away from it. You come back. It's a little wobbly, but it comes back to you. That's what recursive means. It goes back and back. And that's how learning is. So I was struck by the fact that these other people didn't get better. And then he gave the trick, and everyone, how many people feel really good now having struggled and then getting it? Yes. That's what we're saying. The struggle is where the learning takes place. And it's rewarding to struggle and then succeed. If I had given you the pattern first and then told you to do it, there's no point to this activity. By the way, this doesn't measure anything. This is not a real test. Anybody who's good at this, a computer will always be better than you at this. This is not a real thing. So any of you didn't do great, this is not a real thing. It's just to teach us about learning how to learn. Intelligent practice. My friend who found the pattern and gave it to me. If you're struggling in a class and you go to the tutoring center, that person who already knows how to do it can give you help in 10 seconds or 1 minute that you couldn't get from 2 hours working by yourself, right? Intelligent practice is getting help from other people. That's what we learn good strategies, right? So effort by itself is not enough. We want to work smarter, not harder, right? If you're trying to eat soup, you don't want a fork. You want a spoon. And then if you get a soup spoon, it's better than a regular spoon, right? Learning how to learn will help you.